wise critter avoidance, and of course California. What's the #1 pest?
Squirrel.
Wow! This thing had hair all over it. It had slime on its feet, and then I think I got 3 instead of 1 there, all combined. It's a genetically engineered squirrel snail aphid. Anyhow, the snail, I don't care what anybody says, okay, the snail is the #1 pest as far as its sheer numbers and its diet. It will eat anything, okay, it even eats tree bark sometimes. You know, I've seen them do it. So the snail is #1, and so on that one, especially if you're starting the new spring vegetable garden and you haven't cleaned up the snails ahead of time, I guarantee they're going to be in there the first night eating everything you put in the ground. Okay, so you always start baiting ahead of this. If you're getting ready for the whole process, get out there and bait the area before you start gardening. So you want to clean the slugs and snails out before you start to put that new stuff in. Then you don't have to worry so much about, you know, contact with methaldehyde in your plants and stuff like that. And you'll probably have a, you know, a few weeks peace if you baited before you put in the tomatoes. All right. There are, of course, you all know, there's organic baits too for snails, the ones based on iron phosphate. Then there's the noxious methaldehyde baits. They're all still legal. Whatever you like, but beware with the methaldehyde baits. Those are pretty scary. You can't blame the snails for everything, though, and I did hear somebody blame the squirrels. I heard somebody blame the birds. Did I hear the birds? Yes?
What about, I think they're aphids, they're gray on my broccoli.
Yeah.
How do you
yeah, well, they're in the list here, too. They're in the list. I'm gonna get to this. The aphid is towards the end of this, the bugs. But the #1, I think the #1 critter is the snail. It's followed in my yard by the bird. Okay, the birds in my yard will eat every seedling that comes out of the ground. All right, and because of that, I don't. I can kill off snails, but I'm not about to go out and kill off a whole yard full of sparrows or anything. I only brought a little tiny bit because every time I say I use a floating row cover, I usually get a, huh? Most gardeners don't know what this stuff is. Okay, this is Agribon 15, I think. It's the grade. It's an extruded polyester. Here, just kind of hand that around to folks so you can look at it. Right now, all of the winter crops that I raised this year were started in the garden under that stuff. Okay, I put in my pea seeds, I stuck on my broccoli plants and so on, and I just unrolled that stuff over the top. You don't have to support it, it weighs nothing, it floats on the plants, you leave it kind of baggy. I toss, you know, an old piece of 2x4 along the edge and a piece of pipe or something just to weight it down so it doesn't blow away. And I gotta pick it up periodically to look to see how bad the snails are getting at stuff, or how's stuff growing, or are the weeds growing, so you do have to open it up and look. But generally, I can grow crops to maturity under that. I use that to keep birds off of blueberries. I use it to keep almost any kind of an aerial pest, like a bird, off of just about any kind of a crop. There are different grades of it. Some of them hold more heat than others, but in general, when you're using it, the ground underneath is slightly warmer. And so it makes like a little greenhouse, and your plants will tend to accelerate in the growth. If you take eggplants or melons and you use black plastic and then cover it with stuff like that, you've literally created a greenhouse environment for these plants. You can also use stuff like that against beetles and different things, like on melons, for instance. We get problems with wilt. The wilt's carried by the cucumber beetle. If you grow your melons underneath a floating row cover, and then when you start to see the yellow flowers opening up underneath, you need bees, so you got to take the cover off. So you let the bees in. The bees pollinate a crop of melons. When you think you have enough melons set, but you don't want the cucumber beetles killing your vines, then you can go through with like pyrethrin or spinosad or some organic and spray it to kill off any beetles that might be in there, and then cover them and continue ripening the crop beneath the cover. Okay, I mean, I'm sold on floating row cover. With the problems I have with birds in Fremont, I couldn't hardly grow a garden if it wasn't for that stuff. I think half of the stuff people blame on snails is actually bird damage. I've gotten very good at seeing it. And they pull on, tug on, yank and cut at everything you can possibly imagine. I don't even know why they're like that here, because they've never done this to me anywhere else I ever lived. But all the little birds are my stinking enemies. Yeah, and I mean, I feed them too, you know. I get finches hanging outside the window. They're eating the seed, and they're going, "He's not looking. Let's go get the lettuce," you know.
You need a cat colony.
Did you say cat?
Cat colony.
No. The cat turds in the garden are another one of the gardener's nemesis. No way. Anyway, and then otherwise bird scare tape helps to a certain extent. My peas were festooned with bird scare tape, and it seemed to have worked okay this year. Now the cats and the squirrels, somebody said, squirrels? Squirrels. Yeah, okay, yeah, cats and squirrels. Probably the simplest solution that we can go into without grossing everybody out, and that would be to use a scarecrow, the motion detector lawn sprinkler. Know those? The scarecrow motion detector sprinkler. They work pretty good. They're not that expensive. I have had landscape jobs where the lady next door was a cat lady, had 75 cats that always came over to landscape, and when we covered it with mulch, they came over, you know, and I mean, it was like the Great Pyramid of Giza, you know, and not a litter box. I mean, they was, oh God, it was disgusting. We put 4 scarecrows on the corners of the yard, and it got rid of them. The cats left. The squirrels don't like getting watered either, and so that can help. As far as the ground squirrels are concerned, though, I don't know too many better ways to deal with a ground squirrel than ground squirrel bait. Okay, that's the best way, I think. But I have used a half-a-heart live trap, you know, the plain cage traps, with the stale raised glazed donut dipped in old bird seed. Seems to be a killer bait. The ground squirrels are always short of fat in their diet, and probably a bit short of protein. And the fat in the donut, and the protein in the seed, I mean, 15 minutes I've had my squirrel using that as a bait in a half-hour trap. And you know, it would be really fun to use a 12-gauge shotgun, but you can't in town. In comic relief here, I had ground squirrels got under a row of peas in my garden in Wisconsin one time. And I had this hole there, and every time I went out, he took his head up and looked, you know, and my peas were not doing well. I knew they were eating the roots off and so on. And I finally had it. So I went out, and I lit up a cherry bomb, and I rolled that thing down the burrow. I said, this will get them right, I back off. They had the row of their tunnel went right straight down my pea row. I picked up 10 foot of peas, blew them up in the air, and flipped them over on their heads, and they dropped back in with the roots pointing straight up. Yeah, I just completely turned the row over like a tractor and plowed it. Unbelievable, you know. They actually, after that, bleeding from the ears, moved down the hill and left my garden. They never came back. This guy's mad, he's crazy, you know. He uses artillery. But I wouldn't suggest that one. Anyway, the aphids then, the gray aphids on the cabbages, broccolis, and the Brussels sprouts and all that. On that critter, make sure that when you come into October that you have sanitized your cole crops. And so if you put cold weather vegetables in, and they're going to get on cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflowers, I missed something, anyway. They'll get into all the cole crops. Use pyrethrin, or use horticultural oil, or you could use insecticidal soap. There's a variety of different possible things that could be used against an aphid. But whatever you like to use on aphids, use it in October and make sure the plant is completely clean before you get into winter. If you do that, then they won't be in there breeding through the winter. Otherwise, they're going to keep breeding in the plant all winter long, and you're going to end up with a terrible mess of them come spring. All right, and they'll mess the crop up so bad you may have to dump it. You know, they get into broccoli curds. That's not the Brussels sprouts. Oh my God, they can just destroy a Brussels sprout crop. Cabbage, not so bad. You can usually peel the leaves off, and you get a good head in the middle. But you clean those crops in the fall, and if you do that, you're probably going to be okay.